On this episode of Game Shack, I argue that Arcade1up's gull-wing design from their first generation of machines is actually the best ones they ever made. I'm going to give you 5 reasons why, coming up next. Hey everybody, welcome on back into the Game Shack. I'm your host, JDV for Evil Genius Entertainment. Thanks for stopping by the old Game Shack. We really do appreciate it. As always, you guys are this channel's primary sponsor, so if you can give me a thumbs up on the way out the door, you'll help us keep going. Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, I saw a video by Rexor, who is hilarious, and he suggested in a poll that one of the reasons why Arcade1up's had some troubles is the fact that they gave us the things that we wanted, things like coin doors and more arcade original type designs. And that got me thinking about the original gull-wing design of the first generation to even in the third generation. I think they were still making some of these style cabinets. And I got to thinking, well, maybe if Arcade1up has stuck with this design, maybe lost the riser, but more or less just kept on making every machine look like this with maybe slight moderations to the control deck and of course the art, maybe they'd be doing better than they are. And I'm going to give you 5 reasons why this is actually the best design that they ever came up with. Right off the bat, one of the things that you can say about these machines, the original generation, is how tough they are. You could really put all kind of weight on there. You could stand on this thing if you wanted to, because the control deck sits on the main body itself, which was all one piece that sat on the riser. That gave this thing incredible structural strength so that you and your drunken buddies could play on this thing, beat on it all day long, and never have to worry about that. As the designs have moved forward, those controller decks have both oftentimes seen ridges on the sides which interfere with playing, particularly in 2 or 4 player type games. And also they've made the machine inherently weaker. Now, of course, if you baby your machines, it's not going to be an issue, but I don't. I tend to treat my home arcade just the way that I would a normal arcade, which means I hit on these things, I put mirror on them, pop, whatever. And some of the things that I do is sometimes, occasionally, I put my foot on there as I'm trying to change a light bulb or put insulation up or whatever, because I'm lazy. Anyway, the strength and structural integrity of this initial design is actually one of the best, strongest designs that they've ever come up with. A second reason why having the same design makes sense, or at least is helpful to us in the community, is that there were a lot of third-party people who made graphics in all kind of different designs, like for House of the Dead or Donkey Kong or whatever, and they knew the exact dimensions of the machine, so they could just put these out in a huge amount of variety. Now that there's so many different designs, you see a lot less third parties making graphics for Arcade1ups. Of course, you can do it yourself, and some still do, but there was a time when these machines dominated the market where you could go to the websites like Retro360 and a whole bunch of DB graphics, all kind of West Coast graphics. They all made different skins for these machines, and they could do so because they were all the same design. Now that they're not all the same design, it's much harder and more expensive to reskin the machine if you want to. So having them all be the same is a really good thing if you want to mod your machine. Now, while this is not any one arcade original type design, it did incorporate some of the best elements of original arcade machines. And one of them is the fact that, yes, you have this swoop and all that, you have the marquee and controller deck, but because the screen is so close to the front and because this gull wing is so relatively narrow, you can stand pretty far off to the side and still see the screen really, really easily. And that's awesome, of course, if you're playing 2-player, 3-player, or 4-player games. I guess what I'm trying to say is that a lot of thought actually did go into the original design of this cabinet, because when you stand off to the side, I easily can see that. I can see it from here, I can see it from here, I can see it from all the way here, and that's just not going to be the case in some of the more modern designs. So I think that this is a great style of cab. Again, if you want to mod this thing into a shooter, no problem. If you want to put take away your 1-player control deck for Space Invaders, say, and put in your own 4 controller panel or 3 or whatever, that's going to work too, and it's going to work a lot better than any modern machine that Arcade1up currently puts out. Again, this design had a lot of thought put into it, and frankly, I think it looks fantastic. Now, another reason I think that this is a good design, and this is subjective, I admit that, is that I honestly can't remember what most of those original arcade machines look like. And I spent day after day after day in an arcade. I'm a child of the 80s or whatever, how you want to say that. And I can't remember how Space Invaders really looked. I don't remember how Donkey Kong or Pac-Man or Time Crisis or Dragon's Lair, I really don't remember how those cabs look. Now, I understand a lot of you guys are really into the original look of those machines, but I can't remember them, which means for sure that my kids don't remember them because they never saw them to start with. And part of my theory of my own arcade is that it isn't just for me. I have a lot of these machines in here, not because I necessarily love them, although I do, but it's because I think that these are party machines. I have had many people come over here and just kind of use this as a great rumpus room, rec room, whatever, how you want to say it. And not a single person, and I probably have 50 different people over here in the last 3 years, not one of them has ever commented, oh, that doesn't look like the arcade machine, I don't want to play it. Not one person has said that. Because honestly, it's very hard to remember how some of those cabs looked. And the other dirty little secret about some of those original cabs is some of the designs on those cabs were bad. They were not the greatest design cabs. We might have nostalgia for them, but in a practical, playable, on a day-to-day type basis, particularly when you own them and don't have to keep putting quarters in, a design like this is very friendly in terms of just actual playability. Also, here's another thing to say, well, I want that screen to be slanted. Well, it is not very hard to mod this machine. There's enough room here in this, on the sides of this design, that you could actually slant this thing back another probably 20 degrees. So you could get that too, again, if you're willing to do a little bit of modding. This, of course, is a 20-inch dell in here. So it, you know, we're not talking about stock on this, but again, it's a type of cab that you can mod easily because it has such a good original design. The bones, so to speak, on this Gen 1 type design are great. And I've saved probably the best reason for last, and that is the fact that I bought this original cab for $200, I think from QVC. Now, I didn't have a riser. I went out and got one for, I think, $40 at the time at Walmart. Then I paid somebody else another 50 bucks to give me some of the graphics. So we'll say about $300 I ended up all together on this thing, maybe $325 because I did get a lit marquee for it. So for around $300, I got what I think is an incredible looking machine, because again, I don't really mind the riser. And let's presume for the sake of argument that these were modified a little bit so that they were a little bit taller and went with the riserless design. That shouldn't add anything to the price, right? I mean, there's no reason why Arcade1up could not be putting these design out machine after machine after machine and skin after skin after skin for $299. I would rather have these cabs come in at $299 or $349, have the same basic look, the amazing functionality, the strength, the modability, and all the things that go along with this original design, rather than have it look arcade real, but be paying $200, $300, $400 more than this design would cost. And again, it is very possible for them to put this cab out at a 6-foot level and keep it at the $299, because again, the factory is only putting out one design. They're only having to put on the skins and change out possibly the control deck and marquees. That is a lot easier to do than having to change their factories up to change for every cab looking different than the last cab. There's a strong argument to be made that Arcade1up would be in a lot better financial straits if they had stuck with this design. So what would you guys rather have? More titles, cheaper price, but in less arcade accurate type form factors, or fewer titles, like 2 this year, but they're in much more arcade original type form factors, but you're going to be paying a lot more for them because the factory has to switch over, and it's just more cost for Arcade1up because they have to R&D, they have to design these things, they have to change out the factory, yada yada yada. What would you guys rather have? Cheaper, more generic, more titles, or less titles, more expensive, and more accurate? Let me know down below. It really does interest me what you guys think. Am I crazy for thinking that this design is actually still one of the best? Let me know down below. All right, until next time, love each other, and I'll see you guys in the Game Shack. Mwah!
Be sure to visit evilgeniusentertainment.com for exclusive content, swag, casting call news, and much, much more.